finicky one, because everybody is very interested to know how things are going to be like going forward, at least for 2014. Now, a lot of we know that gas plays a very huge role in how much electricity is generated, and so some are saying that the dismal power supply situation we are having right now is because of inadequate gas supplies and vandalization of gas pipelines. So how confident are you that this will be this process of ensuring that the power sector is revamped is successful, seeing as we have issues with gas supply? Again, let's look at it from two different angles. One, from the point of view of investment in the sector, in the gas supply chain, and then secondly, the issue of vandalization. Now let's deal with vandalization first. I think that's responsibility on every Nigerian. It's simply not right that government assets should be vandalized for whatever reason they feel they are justified to do that. Because in doing so, as we can see, they're depriving millions of other Nigerians from doing their businesses. And we all know the importance of electricity to businesses generally. Like the word suggests, power. It's at the base of anything we do. Even the telecoms companies depend on these. So I think an appeal must go directly to people in the habit of vandalizing, that this is simply not on. It's not on. It's sabotage. They shouldn't do that. So for the investors part of now, but from the other side of it is that the government itself was delinquent over the years not to have rolled out its gas master plan in a very practical way. At the point the electricity reforms were being thought about, a similar thing should have been done to the gas, the base source. For these are for the thermal plants now, because there are other sources of power. That should have been done. And again, it brings us back to the PIB, because the PIB is the base law that's supposed to create an enabling environment for this gas that's being flared or being reinjected now to be correctly priced. That's not been done. So the people who own the technology, who own the gas, are simply keeping it for the right time. So government should have been diligent in pursuing a plan that would have allowed, as the electricity reforms were being seriously pursued, would have allowed the gas to be supplied to those thermal plants. There was so much talk in the Obasanjo years about so many thermal plants, IPPs, I'm sure you all know the story, all over the place. But the truth is there isn't enough gas as presently constituted to supply those thermal plants. Even when they're ready, gas is still going to be a challenge. Now, in the ones where gas is available, a few of them have gas. Lagos State, for example, the Lagos State Electricity Board works with Oando, partner with them. Those ones have gas, so they're piping gas directly to some of the thermal plants that have been built by Lagos State. So some areas in Lagos State, some critical infrastructure actually have 24-hour supply as we speak, even though it is priced at more than what the ordinary consumer uses today. So I can't excuse government in that area. We lagged behind. I think I spoke to your judicial correspondent some time ago, and I said we must impress it upon our legislators that a PIB should be passed without delay. We can't continue a system which shuts its eyes to the vast potential that we have because of some political posturing that's going on. That's what's keeping the PIB. If you don't pass the PIB, then that sector, which is today governed by myriads of legislation and sub-legislations and various agreements, with all the confusion all those things portend, will continue to hold sway. Even your oil theft, if you don't have a foundational legislation, because it's law, everything starts from the law. The law is what creates the legal and regulatory environment for businesses to thrive. So the investor who's coming in is looking at your laws. If your laws are not there, there's no certainty. You actually invite crooks to come in.
So those who are stealing your oil and selling it, it's a business on its own. They're making loads of money. It's just that they're depriving everybody else. Because you don't have a legal and regulatory framework to do that.
This issue of gas flaring and getting gas, at least to power the plants. We know that some of these plants that were actually were partly bought by successor companies are actually gas plants as well. And, the average Nigerian isn't really interested in how, getting gas seems to be a problem. And so that comes the issue of high pricing. When eventually they begin to give, light to the Nigerians, there's going to be an increase in how it's going to be priced. And there's this rumor that the new owners actually plan to increase tariff, although the regulator as NEC says it's not correct. But looking at the situation very objectively now, and in light of where we're coming from, do you think increasing tariff will actually help for better power supply?
Just be careful about the way we use terms. When you say increase tariffs, are you saying increasing tariffs without giving commensurate
right now, tariff has even been increased, and they're still not getting what is commensurate to what they pay.
Yeah, what our emphasis should be is, okay, take for example what you do with your generator. Averagely, your generator costs you about 90 naira per electricity power that it produces. That's about what it so we need to put these things in the right pricing frame, about 90 naira. Now, some of these thermal plants we're talking about, and if you go to some estates, they have their own IPPs. If you go check in, they are charging residents something like 60 naira per consumer per unit consumed. Some are working at 40. Now, not zero, the new owners now, are in the average between 11 and 14, depending on your area of consumption. So that's the sort of band that you are looking at. Now, the worry for many consumers is that, why charge me 11 naira per consumer unit and I don't get anything? If you, now they're going to introduce smart meters, which means you're going to pay as you consume. Many consumers I know will not mind doubling 11 naira
as long as I get light.
As long as I get light. That's the key thing. Because the multiplier effect is huge. So we shouldn't just say increase in price without relating it to the electricity you get. And that's where many of the new owners, especially distribution companies, that's where they're heading for. Now, once we get the gas supply chain fixed, and I know they're working on it, done, once a lot of these generate IPPs that have been commissioned get on board, there'll be boost to the national grid. Once the other sources of energy, the hydro and get ready to, they all produce, they push it to the national grid. The challenge, of course, will be to transmit it. Assuming today we're talking about 4,000 megawatts. In like a year, 18 months, this will go up dramatically to 10,000 megawatts. The next challenge, of course, would be, how do you then evacuate 10,000 megawatts through transmission lines that were built for the times that they were built?
Okay.
So that would be just like a highway, a Lagos-Ibadan expressway. When it was built so many years ago, 2 lanes each, it was brilliant for the time. But today, we know, even with 4 lanes each, you're just about meeting what users would truly need. So it's the same way electricity works. That's why I said that Nigerians should not look at these things so esoteric as if it doesn't concern them. You just need to track how these things work.
Okay, was enough done in exploring alternative energy sources, at least for this year?
It's always been there. Now, what are the alternative energy sources? We need coal. We have coal, loads and loads of coal in the eastern part of Nigeria, as we know. For a long time, coal has not been worked. And the reason coal was not worked is when it got out of fashion, when oil was discovered as an alternative source of energy. But it also has a very high pollution content. So it's not your first choice if you want to. But now that energy demand is going up, it's becoming attractive, economically attractive, because at some point you wouldn't get banks to fund you using coal as a source for energy. Hydro is great, perhaps the cheapest source, but then it also falls to the vagaries of your tidal waves. When there's water, you have hydro. When there isn't, it's not that. Yeah, we have hydro. Solar is, you would say, living in the tropics. Solar should be like, and yes, that's also coming on board, but it's expensive initially, highly capital intensive. Now, since most of these things are going to be worked by the private sector, they're going to be tied to the attractiveness to your bankers to fund it, because most of these people, apart from putting their raw cash for equity, most of the capex are borrowed, and these bankers don't do you any favors. They look at cold calculations about where their profits are going before they can do it, which is why this gas option seems so attractive. And because we have it anyway, we have gas in abundance. We're even liquefying some and sending to abroad to provide cheap source of energy. Why can't we do those for ourselves? So it's going to be. I'm glad this conversation is on the front burner, and that's the way it should be. And I'll ask you people like you not to let up because that's the way you remind everybody in the chain to be alive to their responsibility, because there's still going to be this collaboration, as it were, between the various government agencies in charge of power. Government's not just going to walk away, and the private sector and international funding, because again, for all we say, with the power, the legal and regulatory environment for power haven't been firmly established, foreign investors are coming in. And people are just coming in now. They want to set up their own power plants. And even as we speak in Lagos, many estates are getting proposals from independent power producers. We will produce, you will pay a lot higher than you pay normally, but many people are ready to do that.
No, but then we don't just have estates here in Lagos. We also have communities as well that also need power to run their homes, run their petty businesses, and the rest of it. So are these investors also talking to such communities, or is just the estates?
What will happen is, once you can get some of the blue chip consumers, you're looking at your first grade companies, estates in the residential areas that can afford it. Once you supply them with their own independent power, you actually take them off the national grid, and that power is then available to channel to these other consumers.
Okay, now we're really fast spent for time, but going forward, what model do you think would work for Nigeria as far as the power sector is concerned? Because 2014, I always say this, is pre-election year. 2015 is election year. And so we need to get things right by 2014 going on. And then, Nigeria has, the federal government has a vision to generate about 40,000 megawatts by 2020. So going forward, what kind of model is realistically going to work for Nigeria?
Well, the model that will work is a model that's basically the foundation has just been laid down. What we now need to do is just fix the infrastructure that's hindering this model from working. The model is there. Take Lagos, for example. Lagos has been getting 200 megawatts instead of 400 megawatts. So when I hear some of your consumers saying it's worse and all that, it's because what's being transmitted to Lagos is half what it used to be. So, and you have those frequent collapses of the national grid. What do? It's not the fault of the distribution companies. Well, but the model will be for all Nigerians to give themselves power. Power to the people, I would say. Yes,
power to the people. Like you said, this conversation is not one we can finish here in 30 minutes. Well, thank you so much for coming on the program. It's been an absolute pleasure having you today.
Thanks, Harriet, and Happy New Year.
Thank you so much.
Congrats again for the channels, TV, 8th.
Oh, 8th time away. Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, that's the program for today. We've been looking at the power sector, at least for this year, and I've been speaking with an oil and gas lawyer who's also the pioneer chairman, section on business law of the Nigerian Bar Association. Privatisation, George Etomi. Well, thank you so much for being a part of today's program. This is the last edition for the year. I'll see you next year. I'm Harriet Agbinyi.